Today's sermon is entitled God's Presence. One of the things about our revelational faith is this idea that our experience of God has changed or evolved over the years. We see Jacob in our Genesis reading today pulling up to some random place, ready to go to sleep. He selects a rock to use it like a pillow, lays his head down, and then drifts off to sleep, where he dreams of angels going up and down a ladder into heaven, talking to God, and then descending again to do what they have been asked to do. When Jacob awakes, he exclaims, surely the Lord is in this place, and I did not know it. And I did not know it. It comes as a surprise to Jacob, because Jacob encounters God at that spot. He anoints the rock he slept on with oil and calls it Bethel. And Bethel means the house of God. According to commentator R.N. Wybray, Jacob and his ancestors treat this spot like a sanctuary, like the inner part of the temple, the place where God, later on in the Old Testament, meets with the priests once a year. It seems that Jacob was genuinely surprised to meet God in such a place. Yet later on, we see Moses meeting God, experiencing theophanies in burning bushes and on top of mountains. There is a sense that God turns up in more and more places the more we move through the books of the Bible. Until, of course, we get to that climactic moment when Jesus is hanging on the cross and says, "It is finished," dies, and then the curtain in the temple is torn in two. The curtain was the thing that kept God and the people safely apart from each other. It was like the door to the Holy of Holies, that inner sanctuary. This curtain gets torn in half to signify that God is no longer, or at least should no longer be considered to be constrained to the Holy of Holies. This marks every believer's ability to access God 24/7 wherever they are, regardless of the state that they may find themselves in. A couple of weeks ago, the Reverend Ken Sumner, the UAICC National Co-Chair and head of UAICC, that's the Aboriginal and Islander Congress here in South Australia, spoke last week at the Indigenous Ecumenical Conference. And he talked about how he had been living away from SA, from South Australia, and his country for a long period of time, the country his ancestors were from. And then after a while, it became obvious that he needed to go and spend time on country. He needed to spend time on the land. So he went and stayed with one of his sons who looked after him, while he just spent time sitting and soaking in country, letting it speak to him and letting it heal him. The very first unit or paper I did on theology, I did in New Zealand when I went through a period of discernment there back in 2010. This unit was called God, Land and Identity. And in this unit, we looked at the role of Māori and Pacifica people and the core role it took of the land in their identity formation and their theological lens. For me, listening to Ken Sumner's story, it was as if he was having his identity restored, while simultaneously being restored physically and spiritually. For me, as a Pākehā and as a second person in this country, going to the beach, climbing up a hill or a mountain, Anywhere where I can see the horizon is a place where the hustle and bustle of life recedes, and where it's easier for me to see, hear, and feel God, and where it's easier to let God minister to me. The process of being in nature, at one with creation, is where it lets you be at one with the Creator. It's not that God isn't in the crazy of everyday life, because they are. It's just that when I take myself out of the crazy, that is when my ears can hear and my eyes can see more readily the still small voice of God and the fingerprints of God in this world. And the easier it is to commune with God and let God minister to me. And our psalm reading today, verses 7 and 8 say, "Where can I go from your spirit? Or where can I flee from your presence? If I ascend to heaven, you are there. If I make my bed in Sheol, you are there." It emphasizes the promises of Jesus, that he will never leave us nor forsake us, and will be with us until the end of the age. This does not mean that Jesus is hunting us down against our will. That's not how I see it. Rather, I see it as assurance. There is this famous picture of Jesus knocking on a door that doesn't have a door handle. And the idea is that we are the ones who have control over whether Jesus is allowed through the door or not. You see, Jesus will not override our will. For me, one of the genuine advantages of having faith or being a Christian is knowing that you do not need to do life on your own. That you always have God with you, no matter what. Knowing that God is with me where I am at any one moment, whether I'm consciously aware of God's presence or not, is massively reassuring. I know that God is there with me, that they see what I am going through. So when I do get to commune with God, when I'm consciously opening up my heart to God, that they know exactly what I'm talking about. There is a comfort in knowing that God knows exactly what I'm doing. There's a sense that I am seen, even if no one else sees. God does. It doesn't matter where I have lived or travelled in this world, whether I've sat on the side of a lake in Europe, the beach on a Mediterranean island, or up the snow peaks of the Swiss Alps, or just up a pretend hill, the highest point of a shire in England. These are the places I have communed with God, where I have gotten my bearings and decompressed before going back to the hustle and bustle of life and its demands. Taking time out, finding the space where you can more easily connect with God is so important. It allows us to bring the challenges and struggles to the foot of Jesus' cross, to at least metaphorically dump them there for Jesus to deal with. For you to unburden yourself from the things that, at least for a moment, for in this moment, the darkness that tries to swallow you then recedes to let the light of God in. Verse 12 says, "Even the darkness is not dark to you. The night is as bright as the day, for darkness is as light to you." Even when we struggle to find a glimmer of hope, with God beside us and living within us, hope slowly begins to be restored as the world seems to come to rights once again. Where a sense of peace, the peace that goes beyond any human understanding, washes over us, and we feel grounded and loved and under control again. May God be your rock and your cornerstone in this world, wherever you may find yourself. And remember Jesus' promise that he will always be with us, that we can bring all that troubles us to him and walk away in hope and love. Amen.